So this one, usually in class it doesn't come up yet, but then students ask me about a couple months after they come out of college and they have interviews with their first jobs, and then they ask me, what should I ask for how much should I ask? And I remember I was in this situation when I went to my first interview, and I was so happy I finally found this job after looking for so long, and I would have had really trouble to pay my rent at this point. I needed this job, so I felt really, I'm not in a position where I can argue about the salary, because what if they say no? Then I jinxed it and I'm like back at square one. I have to do this whole thing again. I'm so happy I finally found this job and they want me. I stayed there full time for 1 year, and my salary, I thought it was $2,000 a month. After tax, I ended up with something like 1,700 or so, and I thought I was rich. I went to the oyster bar and ordered everyone dinner. I was like, oh, let's make this a regular thing because I'm rich. I didn't realize that, of course, we would work there long, long hours, and then if you break it down, it was actually not that much money at all. The problem is you never really get to practice this much unless you really stumble through a lot of jobs and get fired or want to go to different jobs all the time. So it's something you can't really practice, but there are a few tips I can give you. If they already invited you to come to the interview, that means they already really think that you're a good fit. They don't invite a lot of people. There will be 3 or 4 other people maybe that they're interviewing and want to check out how this fits. So talking about the money is something you have to do. It's like ripping off this Band-Aid and get it over with. And you just have to do it. And the thing that you can do is write down the sentence in your notebook, bring it to the interview with you, hold on to it and read the sentence off the page and just get it over with, because this sentence apparently, they say, will give you a higher salary no matter what you say. Just say it. So thank you for your offer, but I was hoping a little bit more from the salary front. Is there anything you can do? Because usually when they come in, they have a range that they still planned into your salary. So they're going to offer you the low end, of course, and then they're going to see what else they can do. But you can look up when you come into this meeting what is sort of an average that you can expect to sort of leverage on that. But there are places where you can look up an average salary like Glassdoor, Career Explorer, Indeed, PayScale, maybe even LinkedIn, and the AIGA. You get really, when you Google these prices, you do get a very wide range. And of course you have to keep in mind the location where the company is. In New York, they will pay more than somewhere outside and things. Also, the industry that you're applying for, the advertising and pharma budgets are much, much higher than if you do a very straightforward marketing job, or real estate, or entertainment won't have that much of a budget as well. So just keep that in mind and kind of ask around in that industry what other people, friends of yours, are getting. There's if they don't want to tell you, that's totally fine. It's understandable. People don't want to talk about their salary, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So this is a trick question. When they ask you what is your expected salary, don't ever answer it, because then you give them the most valuable information about you right away. So that's not a good play to play your cards. To avoid this question, if they do ask that, because they might think you're not experienced, you're just new to this, so we just ask them. So if you do, then you just say, I'm not really concerned about the salary at this point. I really want to find out what your company does and if we're a good fit. And if it really works out between us, I'm sure we can work out the salary too. That's a good answer, because it says that your primary concern is not the money, which is also a good thing. And then when they still keep asking that, then just say, well, for me, this is really a big step up from my last job. I have a lot more responsibilities, and I'm hoping I get a better compensation than I had at my last gig or from before. So you're saying that you do expect a little bit more. But if they still don't want to give up, then you could say, well, my expectations are along the lines of market rates. And of course, at this point, you have to have had some research done of finding out what the market rates are, so you can have some of those numbers. Write them down in your notebook, bring it with you, and just say, in my research, it says so and so and so. That is, if they don't just say, like, this is what we got to offer, take it or leave it. But if they bring it up and you think, like, oh, this sounds really great, it's more than I expected. But if you're buying, like, a shitty sports car and you say, I'll give you $10,000 for it, and they're like, yeah, take it, please, 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 then probably there's something wrong with it. So maybe you bargained hard enough. It's still worth to bargain a little bit more, negotiate, because otherwise maybe your calibration was wrong. Maybe you actually didn't think you could have. Maybe you undervalued yourself, and that will, in the long run, will hurt yourself, because this job that you're getting now will be sort of the benchmark for coming into the next jobs as well. It's also kind of good if you have another interview here and there set up, so you know that this is not the only one that you're really, really relying on. You will have more confidence talking about salary. You can always say, let me think this over, because I have another 2-3 interviews coming up, and I just want to give them also a chance to see what they can offer me. There's another trick that you can ask in negotiations when you can say something like, is this sentence, like, is that really all you can do? And then leave if they respond like, yeah, that's really just all that we have. Just leave them a very, very long, awkward silence, because they're trying to resolve this as well. So at this point, they're like psychologically driven, like, what can I do? Like, isn't there anything I can do? And if they did have something in the back of their mind they can still throw in, then they will do it at this point. So just give them this little bit of a pause. That's also Elon Musk here said in an interview, like, that long pauses, awkward pauses in meetings can be very good for people to really think of what they want to bring to the table. It's emotional, but it can bring, like, really the stuff out that you want to say. So don't be afraid of these little awkward pauses, because you need to feel each other out. So that's kind of good if that's happening. And so if you want to be still in that meeting, you don't want to, like, say something stupid and like be like, don't be negative about this. It's like, if I don't get this money, then I'm not going to work for you, because it's not about the money. It should be primarily about the job. So really keep repeating that you're really, really interested to be in this team, and that this is like not your dream job, but like make it feel like you really, really wanted that, and that's really like the career you want to go in, because they also don't want you to be unhappy and then you leave them after they just started onboarding you for half a year, and it takes time to get people working in the company. So they don't want to invest all this time and then you leave anyway because you were never happy with it. So you can build in this positivity that you're really trying to, like, this is really what you want to do. So this is a really good tip. Bring your notebook and write down these talking points that we just had, these tips that I gave you, the awkward pause, write down the salary comparison numbers, because in the interview you will be nervous and you don't know what to talk about, so you have these to kind of hang on to. And also at the time, write down the answers that they gave you, the numbers that they gave you and what they promised you, so you can later on reiterate these in a follow-up email. So you can tell them, we were talking about this and this and this and this. And when you write down the numbers in your notebook, it's going to help you to write that email after, like, to follow up. So if they really can't really do anything about the salary, there are other things you can ask for. That you could ask for stock if it's a big company, but this is a trick here. Some startup companies, they will offer you stock, but keep in mind that a startup company stock is worth zero. Like when we had this magazine flyer at the time, we were having so many fights about how many percentage everybody should own. We totally forgot that this percentage is still zero. If this is worthless, then it doesn't matter how many percent you have of this company. So, but if it's a big company, then it might be a good option for them. It's also good for the company because they don't have to pay out this stock right now, so it's not going to fall into their budget for this year. You also ask about the 401k options that they have, health insurance, dental, things like those perks can make a difference. You could ask for more vacation days. That's kind of hard because many companies just have a rule that they don't do this. There are sign-on bonuses for bigger companies, like if you work for Amazon, or then they'll actually give you 5,000, 10,000, even to come on board with their company. I think you can do this more when you're more in an established position. But you could also ask for, since this job is a little bit further away, you would have to move to this city or things like that. You can, or what I'd also like to put in is, if it's a full-time position, but if you can ask for educational stipend, which is a great way to kind of show your enthusiasm as well, that you'd really like to grow on this position, that you want to go to, let's say, conferences that are related to that could be also good for the company to represent them there. So you can also put these into benefits that are not monetary directly. And then you can also ask if there's any room for personal projects. So another thing you can do at this moment if you're unsure, because everything you always have to get it in writing at the end anyway. So at this first interview, when you first talk about negotiating salary, you might not want to commit to it right away, especially if you have other interviews coming up. And you might want to take it offline and say, let me talk about this with my family or my mentor, you can mention me or something, just so you take it offline and they can bring it back to their team. So in this podcast that I was listening to, you mentioned this book. It's about hostage negotiation tactics. Not that an interview be like that, hopefully. But they are talking about that a lot of decisions in companies are made emotionally, not on facts, really. So if they give you more money and it's just in this moment that you work together, so you kind of solve this problem together. Think of it like that. It's not like you're fighting each other, but you're trying to solve that both parties are really happy. And this is the podcast that I just mentioned before. It's called Design Review. It really is a good one for you to listen to because it's relatively young designers talking about their experience and how they got started in the industry and their tips. And I took a lot of tips from this in this presentation here. And this is the sentence that they mentioned in this blog, that you could just read off the paper and we'll give you an automatic 10% more, and in the long run that can be a lot of money. Just say, thank you for the offer, I was hoping for a little more on the salary front, is there anything you can do? And then they'll just go back, they don't have to answer it right away, because also after the interview you want to have this in writing. What you talked about in the interview means nothing if you don't have an email that confirms what you're talking about, and then they'll send you the contracts and everything afterwards anyway. Before you verbally agree back and forth on the email, you have something in writing. But this sentence will actually really make you a lot of money. You can also mention something that, can we write in the contract that in 6 months we can talk about salary again, and then we can both evaluate how much value I brought to this company, and I'm trying to really work hard on this, on these projects. I'm really excited about it. That would be a good thing. I was never really full-time anywhere, so I'm not really sure. You can see on my resume here, I worked for a ton of places, always freelancing. So I just know that once you have your salary locked, it's very hard to change it unless you have really defined these stops where you say every year we'll talk about it and we have a sort of performance review about it. So it's good to talk about it from the onset.